Okay, so we are May the 6th, and we're starting the MicroProfile AI meeting. Let me share the minutes. Let me find the minutes and share them. Okay, that's it. Sorry for the bus. So here we are. Can't you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So I was supposing that I was assuming that Emily would join us, so and I didn't have to prepare those. But anyway, so to sum up what we discussed and decided during the previous meeting, so we finally arrived to the conclusion that it's a bit too early to start for specification. And the idea is to start working on, I don't know how to call it, a kind of implementation, but a kind of sandbox regarding AI for MicroProfile. So it would be a kind of implementation, providing vendor-neutral implementation for using long-chain 4J. That was the decision we made. We had a nice chat with Clément, who's here today. Thank you, Clément. And he gave us some insight regarding the long-chain 4J Quarkus implementation. So it will be quite, how to say, tough to get started on that, especially due to the fact that there should be a lot of integration regarding the runtime for all the metric stuff and monitoring and etc. That was done for Quarkus. But anyway, we can get started with something simple, like you suggested, Clément, perhaps starting with a kind of REST client implementation for OpenAI could be a starting point. And after that, we have two big modules to consider, one for ingesting data, and after that, one for building the effective chatbot and stuff like that. Am I missing something if we go?
Yeah, I just would like to say it's a REST client for the OpenAI API, not for the OpenAI service provider.
Yeah.
And the reason is there is a convergence across many LLM provider. So this is the API that is most likely used, and this is you need to start by this. Once you have this, you can start calling both Llama or OpenAI or various others APIs, LLM provider, so you can start building. But yeah, that's the first part is this. Make sure that everything is optional, because something is funny is they all converge, but with different level of compatibility, let's say. If I take VLLM, for example, which let you run LLMs locally or on the cloud or things like that, they do provide an OpenAI-like API, but actually only 50% of it. So you need to be aware of that.
But you seem to say that everybody will, in the end, will align on OpenAI API. Is it true?
Yes,
is it only an insight?
It's a continuation on the continuation part, on the completion part, yes. And that's a movement we have seen for the last few months. So we don't have a lot of observation, but LLMs are quite young too. So initially, every cloud LLM provider came with its own APIs, and now there is a big convergence. Like Llama has decided to retire their legacy API. I think Mistral AI picked directly OpenAI and things like that. But the OpenAI APIs is modular in the sense that you have the completion part and the embedding part. The completion part, most LLM providers are implementing it. The embedding part, there's lots of debates whether it should be there, not there, something totally different, yeah. It's the embedding part is slightly more tricky.
So if we go the way you suggested regarding the REST client, so this REST client shouldn't consume REST endpoint. I'm not sure to get it.
No, it will consume a REST endpoint, but it not necessarily the OpenAI service REST endpoint.
Yeah, okay. It
You
will
can
be
redirect it to
an abstraction able to interact with any other. Okay. A REST client able to consume. I don't know. Yeah, we are chatting here, Clément and I, but perhaps you have other point of view and insight on that. What is your feeling about this? How to say? This way of seeing the MPI specification delayed. Well, we said around 1 year. If we want the dust to settle down with all the moving stuff. Anybody has no?
What, just to have something to do only with completions and embedding, or what is the focus for phase 1 or version 0.1 or first version?
So I think the idea could be that we get started with this MicroProfile compatible framework around AI. We deliver this kind of experimental stuff, see how people use it and have their feedback. And if we have feedback and we see that people are interested, we go for the specification. That's my way to see that, but perhaps
yeah, maybe if I don't know if you were there last week, but the problem is that writing a spec right now is going to write a spec on the status of LLM in May 2024. That status is going to be very different in September, November, December, and so on. So we need to wait until there is the dust settled a little bit. The example I'm now using is a RAG. The RAG, which is a very common pattern in the AI or in the LLM world. Since it was introduced and very popularized, was what, back in November, something like that, it has got extended a few times, rewritten a few times, and just last week I came with some extensions to RAG that we will need in Quarkus. So even the most common patterns is still evolving. So it's pretty hard to write a spec on something which is moving so quickly, and that's why it might be a little bit early to write a spec. However, it's not early to experiment things, try to find the right model, the right abstraction, what it means for a MicroProfile app to consume a response from an LLM, or to implement a RAG. Even if the pattern is not completely finalized, the basics will still be there. So
yeah, no, because I think last week I sent like a link to to do the comparisons on like the most popular LLMs for completion, for just the completion in embeddings. And already like the parameters and the object structure for each, it kind of varies. Even though, like, for example, completion is kind of similar between various LLMs, but for example, some of them have top K and some of them have max tokens or whatever. So how would so the abstraction would be how do we make it compatible so that when a developer just uses specify a value, somebody can translate it as a top K, or somebody understands it as a max tokens or whatever. Because ultimately, yeah, so that's why I was trying to figure out what do we want to, what are we looking at like initially, and then the timeline for it. Then we can work from there.
So first, for people not knowing, top K and max token has nothing in common. So you should not interpret the value of one or the other. That will be wrong. But actually, these two ones are quite common across model. But here is the next thing, and the next complexity is that there is the REST client is going to talk to LLM provider or LLM serving capabilities. But then the parameter you mentioned, max token, temperature, top K, and so on, depends on the model, the thing that is served. And one provider may provide many models, like Hugging Face. So Hugging Face as a serving facility, I think they can serve 1,000 different models today. So, and for each of them, the parameter might be slightly different, even if you will find top K, max tokens, and temperature on almost all of them. It's true that there are differences. And unfortunately, I don't believe models will all follow the same interface. Another thing that they don't share is their tokenizer and mostly how you pass a prompt. For example, if you take Mistral, Llama, or GPT, they have 3 different ways to structure your prompt with different specific tokens and things like this. And that makes it very annoying, I would say, for the end developer, because basically when you switch from one model to another one, like imagine I've wrote my application against Mistral and now I want to try the newest Llama 3. It's not only to say, hey, now my Llama 3 is at this location and redirect my REST client to that scene. I actually need to revisit my prompt because how it's going to be interpreted is different based on the model. And that is also something I'm not sure how we can handle such kind of high heterogeneity between models. The best is GPT because they are so good that you can write almost anything, they will understand it. But for the others, it's not that easy.
So how can we address this difference between all the LLM? Do you think it's possible to have an abstraction layer to be able to? Yeah, that's the question. Okay.
No, it's not only the question. Is there is something that start to be released, which is named a model card. Hugging Face are storing a lot of them. Llama is Meta is providing a lot of them for the Llama one, which actually is one page where you have lots of information about the model, and something that we do not have in Quarkus Function Project. So it's mostly something that we are starting discussing is, do we need a way to say, hey, to select the card, more or less? Oh, I'm going to use a Mistral, and this is a Mistral card which comes with all the non-parameters, all the all the special tokens and things like that. But it's not going to be easy, because that means that if you want to integrate with your own LLM or with an LLM that we don't have the card yet, you will need to start implementing the card, that CINI, which is which may limit adoption. So we are. I'm still not. I see that it's going to be required or it's going to be delivered. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, John, you raised the hand.
Yeah, first to shortly introduce myself, I'm new to that group. I'm part of the MicroProfile Steering Committee and representing the so-called MetaJAC combination of the German-speaking Java user groups in that steering committee. Maybe could that be solved by doing something like we did in Jakarta Persistence with a driver that speaks some dialect and maybe some additional parameter that defines model-specific things?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
can
so
be
the
right.
dialect ID is actually something I was starting looking at. It's most probably going to end up with something like that.
So that means we'll have to get OpenAI and Mistral and Google and all these other guys who have exposed LLMs to also contribute to creating interfaces and also create like a driver for the LLMs then.
And yeah, and you can see that it's not an easy sell, but yeah, it's most probably something that will be required because otherwise you can't really switch from one model to another one easily.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, that's
even if we have this dialect stuff, which is quite smart, we still need something above it, kind of abstraction of the specific stuff. No, yeah, we
You
can.
will need a way to pass the prompt, to pass
Yeah,
the system message, the user message, and get the response back. I'm only talking about text right now. I'm not talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
multimodality, image and videos and
We are
audios
not
and
an image
that's
yet. Yeah,
yeah. So, but yeah, once you have that, you more or less have your integration. So if you have a way to write a prompt and wrap the prompt in the right dialect, so with the right token inside and things like that. No, will you have to rewrite a prompt if you go from Mistral to Llama? Yeah, most probably because they don't have the same number of parameters, same level of understanding. So you may have to tweak things, but at least it's going to be formatted in a way that it works correctly with the model. Otherwise, it's going to hallucinate every single time.
yeah. And you'll have the if you change the model, you'll have I don't know how to say it, the placeholder to fill with the new model and the stuff to move around. Yeah. Riken, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I think about to provide an abstraction because a lot of LLM are inspired by OpenAI to build their API. Okay, if you get the model of OpenAI like a backbone to make it as an interface model, and a lot of provider like Mistral or Gemini Pro implement it and add specific parameters for them. I think it's the best way to do this.
Well, one thing along the lines of what Jan is talking about, it to me seems to be something like a query builder. But one issue is you have things to deal with like variables and functions, which are still emergent features, So it seems like the query builder itself needs to have extensions that you would plug in based on, the capabilities of the model as described via a card or whatever mechanism. And I think we're certainly going to have to, have feedback or be creating issues to try and get APIs moving in a direction that actually makes them abstractable. I mean, today it's just kind of Wild West and unusable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of like a token language or support language interface that can be translated to various LLMs then.
Yeah,
Well,
tokenization is actually very dependent on the language, so it's even worse because the tokenizer you use might be different depending on your language. Typically, if I take a GPT, they support something like 20 languages, but you have also special tokenizer for ancient, well, for Greek. They even have a specific LLM for Greek. And yeah, the fact that tokenizers are actually language specific makes things even more complicated. Like how, like you will need a tokenizer for Chinese, for example, because how tokens are structured are completely different. So even providing an abstraction on top of tokenization is not that simple. So it's when I say it's still very early days, it's like every day a new problematics arise, and I'm like, damn it.
So we need to have a kind of, I don't know, like a kind of driver, even if it's not the right concept, with a very open part for configuration, like something like a map and something like that to put all the specific stuff. Is that the idea?
Once, well, there is some part that are already canned and we know what's there, but yes, some part might be very, very specific to a model. But one thing is, and that's a mistake we did in Quarkus Function for J, is that initially we were integrating the LLM provider. And actually, the driver you need is actually a model driver. It's not for the model provider, it's actually for the specific model. But initially, when we started that experiment, it was almost one model everywhere. So 2 for OpenAI, but for the other one was 1. So it was relatively easy. But now it's way more complicated. So yes, we need to switch a little bit and write driver per model. But with one model being created every day, you can quickly imagine that it's a problem.
Don, you raised the hand. Sorry, I am.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know, Clement, if you know the answer to this, but it feels like, I mean, I see on the LangChain for J page that they have a list of supported LLM integrations and the capabilities that relate to each of the different models that are provided. But it's at a much less detailed level than, I'll put that in the chat, by the way. It's in a much less detailed way than what we're describing here, which is, getting into the prompting and nuances of each individual model. Does LangChain, LangChain overall, not just LangChain for J, but does LangChain, are they attempting to drive the standardization that we're talking about here amongst the group of LLMs that are participating in that? Because it feels like for a newbie group like us to just show up and try to convince OpenAI and Google and others to implement a common interface, it feels like we'd be much better off supporting something like LangChain that's perhaps already got a good relationship in that community to drive that.
So I cannot talk for LangChain, but for LangChain for J, the integration of each model is actually quite minimum, and it's at the provider level, not necessarily at the model level. And that's why, if you look at some various examples, especially on Quarkus Function for J, because I did the work, if I use Mistral, I have specific token in my prompt. Otherwise, Mistral is not smart enough or is not very accurate. I don't think LangChain for J, at least right now, is not going to try to write a standard or ask the LLM provider to, hey, no, that's your token, something like that. Unfortunately, no. They want to integrate a maximum of things, but right now, There is no effort to standardize this. And as I said, there is a model every day, and probably even more. It's super hard for, it's not something that is going to be simple. And how you interact with models is also evolving very, very quickly. November, we only have text and DALL-E that was generating pictures. And now you're starting having audio, videos, everything. And some models support several modalities. Some models no. Well, it's
Wow.
pretty dynamic, let's say.
I wonder if
Multimodality is a big problem. Well, for our side of the things, like how does that mean to host? What's the context of a conversation when you have something multimodal and multimodal, and maybe model with different modalities? So
yeah, and I wonder how much the OpenAI and Google and Meta and others care about standardization at this point. I'm guessing that's not the top of their list of considerations, and even if LangChain as a group was trying to push them towards providing a standard interface, everything is so explosive on the research side currently that it feels like any effort to standardize, it's likely to not get a lot of traction with, as you're saying, Clement, folks that are trying to completely change the model every month to do new cool things.
So if we go back to the initial proposal, could we imagine starting with a REST client implementation using LangChain 4j under the hood, and starting by targeting one LLM, let's say OpenAI, to be original, or I don't know, Gemini Pro or whatever, and try to see how we can get abstraction on that. Do you think it's a good way to proceed, Clément?
So first, there is an SPI that we have introduced because of the Quarkus needs in Quarkus LangChain 4j. I can't remember when it was, probably in December, something like that. So you can do this. Well, and you can look at how it's done in Quarkus. No, you mentioned Gemini. Gemini is actually interesting because that's one of the models that does not follow the OpenAI.
Okay, so let's start with OpenAI. Yeah, Bouaké,
OpenAI, Mistral AI, Olamas are the three.
You wanted to say something, Bouaké?
Yeah, Anthropic Claude AI is actually the smallest because it's only got 2 endpoints for completion and for embedding, and they don't do vision as yet. And yeah, so that's the smallest, and and the model structure, the JSON is not as very complicated as, for example, GPT-4 and 5 now that we call vision and stuff. So that's the smallest you can do to actually, if you want to play around with LLM and then build something from it. It's kind of similar to OpenAI, but it is the smallest one. It's only got 2 endpoints. I know this because I created a client from scratch, but yeah, that's the smallest that I've found so far. Out of Gemini is the worst. There has no structure, and they do what they follow the old Palm API, which they deprecating anyway. So yeah, so I would say OpenAI and Anthropic would be the two best to try and see what the similarities are, and then without going into the complexities of every other LLMs and the APIs that are exposed.
I don't know Anthropic. What is the name?
Was the similar
Anthropic.
With Claude AI.
Yeah,
Okay.
Claude AI. Even
Okay,
Mistral,
okay,
kind
okay.
of the same. Yeah.
So are you designating yourself as a volunteer, Boaki, to start this implementation?
I have my custom one, which is well, okay. I can try and see what I can build and design, and then we can work from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I suggest is that next week we
Oh,
discuss.
next week, a lot of people are going to. I'm gonna be at JCon next week.
Okay,
When
yeah.
where's JCon?
Oh,
What's
the week after, then. And this week in France, there will be a lot of people on vacation. There are a lot of French around here. Yes, that's the reason why there are less people than usual. So yeah, there will be a meeting next week, but perhaps to summarize what we said today, and the week after, we'll start discussing about the logistic on those points. What do you think, guys?
Sounds good. One general question. So it's complicated enough to handle these LLMs. And this group is only focusing on LLMs at this point, right? Because my reason being here today was Spring used Spring AI, but AI is a wide field and LLMs only a small part of it. Maybe when we start a sandbox, which is fine from my perspective, to push these things forward and have a repository to collaborate on, would it be a good idea to rename this working group to MicroProfile LLM?
Yeah, anyway, but if you want to suggest a wider approach, we can discuss about it. But if we have to start on a small part. So LLM is a starting point, but if you have an insight to go further later.
Maybe the group name is great. Name it MicroProfile AI, but the sandbox repository, we want to implement some MicroProfile specification from later, should be named MicroProfile LLM.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's the
I agree. I completely agree with Jan on this. Right now, it seems that the focus is LLM, and it's a pretty good starting point. It's already hard enough, believe me.
I mean, it's should be renamed initiative.
Yeah.
Should be renamed MicroProfile LLM.
But Jan has a point, especially now with Java 22 and the vector API of Java being more and more mature. It will be finally possible to start doing more than just LLM, but actually even serving your own model. There is things like JLlama and a few things. So there is two ways. You can use a Llama CPP GNI bridge. So you need to know that Llama CPP, if you're not OpenAI or Cloud or a big one, is the thing that is used everywhere. So and you compile it, it's in C or C++, C++, it's in the name. And then you can use a GNI bridge, but performance and memory-wise, not that great. I do it. I'm not very happy. But now with the new vector API, it's really opened the door for a lot more things because we can actually manipulate vectors and tensors, because tensors are vectors, way more efficiently. Matrix multiplications is still slow, but it's always slow because it's complicated. But the rest we can really start doing a more integration. So running your model, calling doing the pre-processing of data when you use a model that is not an LLM. So yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. I would love to have more time to actually go there and investigate, because it's really, yeah, it's but Java needed that new vector API. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we were, who wants to
Yeah.
spend time debugging GNI? No one.
Anyway, guys, we reached the end of our time. I guess that the final message is you have to go back to your old maths books and and go back on vectors and tensors and matrix multiplication. Anyway, thanks, and see you around next week or the week after.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.